You're watching Pat Plays. It's time for some more coffee and nostalgia, and today I want to talk about miniguns in movies. For me, there's just something about miniguns that make them the most visually badass weapon that's ever been put on screen in any action film. And you can just tell by looking at it why so many directors have chosen to have this gun in their films. It's basically a Gatling gun with 6 barrels that spin around really fast. It fires 1,000,000 rounds a minute, and it's supposed to be mounted on top of a helicopter. But in the films that we're going to look at, the characters actually carry the minigun around, which is just the most badass thing you can do. Any bog standard film out there could be like a 4 out of 10 for me, but if there's a really awesome minigun scene, it goes up like another 2 points. You're immediately a 6 out of 10 film. The first example I want to show is from The Matrix. This is the minigun being used how it's supposed to be used. Like I said, it's meant to be actually attached to the side of a helicopter and manned from the helicopter itself. And this is the scene where Neo uses the minigun to rescue Morpheus, who's being held hostage by the Agent Smiths. And again, this is an example where it's already an awesome film, but because they've got a scene where Neo is shooting a friggin' minigun, it just makes it 1,000,000 times better already. My favourite shot has to be the one from below, where you can actually see all the rounds falling down onto the screen, basically showing how many shots he's actually firing. And the Wachowskis obviously chose to do this so that the bullets visually look like the Matrix code letters falling down the screen.
Do you believe it now, Trinity?
Of course she friggin' believes it now. Never mind the fact that he just saved her life and stopped her from falling to her death. It's the fact that he was able to man that minigun and hit everybody else in the room but Morpheus in the middle. That's impossible. So the Matrix clip there was pretty low on this list quite early because, like I said, it was being used how it's meant to be used. It was attached to a helicopter. So now let's have a look at a minigun that's being carried by somebody. The first example of this being in Predator, where Jesse Ventura's character, Blaine, carries the minigun himself, and he has the line of ammo coming out from it and then attaching to his backpack, which is just a huge tank full of ammo. And what makes this minigun even more badass is the fact that it has a name, Old Painless.
Come on in, you fuckers. Come on in. Old Painless is waiting.
Time to get Old Painless out the bag.
Payback time.
So in the first half of this film, Blaine is the one carrying the minigun around, and as you can see here, he's using it to fight off the bad guys. Which I think is just hilarious, the fact that these 3 guys come running onto screen, and then around the corner comes this dude who's carrying a friggin' minigun, and he just blasts the out of all of them. And then later on in the film, after Blaine has died, Mac, played by Bill Duke, is the next person who gets to pick up Old Painless and use it himself. They're absolutely mowing down the forest in front of them because Mac thinks he's seen something in the distance. So next up I want to talk about the second Resident Evil film. This is Resident Evil Apocalypse. And in my opinion, what makes this the best out of all the Resident Evil films is the fact that this one has Nemesis in it.
What the fuck is that?
Fire!
So again, like I said, this could be a pretty bog standard film in most people's opinions, but they've given Nemesis a friggin' minigun. So for me, extra 2 points. It's like a 7 out of 10 already. Actually no, that's far too much. It's like a 5 or a 6. But it's Nemesis with a minigun! Oh, And can't forget the rocket launcher too.
You motherfuckers is crazy. Look at that big motherfucker got a rocket launcher.
Stars. Next up on the list might actually be a surprise to some of you. It's Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Yes, of course, the best Marvel film. Yep, you heard it. The best Marvel film just happens to have a minigun scene in it. That is just too good of a sweet coincidence right there. So unfortunately it's just a random Hydra agent that's using it, but he is wielding it the same way that Blaine did in Predator, where he's holding the minigun and he's got that ammo feed going right round from the gun onto his back, which is obviously housing all the ammo. And this one's quite cool because it's like they've cut the barrels down in half and made it like a really small snub-nosed minigun. And obviously this thing is no match for Captain America's vibranium shield, and the bullets just fly off it. So that was an awesome action set piece and an extremely welcomed addition to an already amazing film. I watched The Winter Soldier again recently and I have to say, it's made its way back to the top of my MCU list. It's just too good. So before we get to the last movie, which in my opinion is the best minigun scene ever put to film, I just wanted to throw in this honourable mention of Iron Man 2. So the minigun makes its appearance in Iron Man 2 when Justin Hammer gets his hands on the second Iron Man suit and creates the War Machine suit using all of his Hammer weapons.
Claridge high-tech semi-automatic 9mm pistol, M24 shotgun, pump action. This is the FN 2000 from Belgium. We're looking at a Milcore 40mm grenade launcher.
And one of these includes...
This is an M134 762 minigun, 6 individual barrels, the torso taker, powder maker. Our boys in uniform call it Uncle Gazpacho or Puff the Magic Dragon. Okay.
So obviously, as we see later in the film, the minigun is placed on the shoulder of the War Machine suit and it looks absolutely awesome. The scenes at the end of the film where Iron Man and War Machine are fighting together back to back, it's one of the best action scenes in the MCU in my opinion. And it actually portrays the War Machine suit as a powerful, badass suit. And in my opinion, Iron Man 2 is the best War Machine film, as he actually looks the most badass in the Mark I version of the suit. As the films went on, he just got more and more slimline and cleaner, and straight away the next time you see him, they've already taken that minigun off his shoulder. And of course, finally, if you hadn't guessed this already, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger as the T-800 scares off all the police units outside the Cyberdyne Systems building and leaves 0 casualties. Earlier in the film, when the Terminator and John Connor are sent on weapons detail, the minigun itself has this awesome reveal scene. And after picking it up, he gives that cheeky smirk, and you just know that something badass is going to happen later on in the film involving that minigun. That scene is just one of the best action pieces in any film ever. And the minigun is of course the highlight right at the centre of it all. And it didn't even need to be used to kill anybody in that scene for it to be one of the best action scenes ever. So they did try to recreate the magic of this scene in Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. This is where the T-850 is carrying John Connor inside the coffin and he fires at all the police officers with his machine gun.
Drop your weapon and the coffin!
I will admit it is an awesome scene, but it's just nowhere near as cool. And one of the main reasons for that is it's not a minigun. However, later in the film he does rip a minigun off the T1 and use that. And then again in Terminator Salvation, the T-600s, the early Terminator models, are using miniguns attached to their arms. There was no miniguns in Genesis, and there's no miniguns in Dark Fate. So there you go. The only decent Terminator sequels have got miniguns in them. And funnily enough, that's something that the last few films on this list have actually had in common. They've all been sequels. So maybe that's just part of the formula to make a decent sequel. Make sure there's a minigun in it. Which you could say is what the Triple Slap boys had in mind when they made Grugel 2 Rebirth. That's right, you might have forgotten about it, but we certainly didn't. Grugel 2 Rebirth had a minigun in it. This was of course attached to the front of the Mecha Grugel, which of course the boys used to fight the Grugel in the final battle of the film. Obviously, a huge thanks has to be given to Sam Bowers, who not only designed the Mecha Grugel, he actually made it move as well, with the help of a PlayStation 3 controller.
Whoa, it moves. You're damn f***ing right, it moves.
And of course, some animation software. Movie magic! So when it came to designing the Mecha Grugel, as you can see in this early test photo here, the first thing Sam actually did was make it all chrome and stick a minigun on the front. And not only did it have a minigun, but just like Nemesis, it had a rocket launcher too.
Don't worry boys, I've got this.
Initiating launch sequence.
And it's got a chainsaw too. What more could you want? That's all the best movie weapons in one machine. The Mecha Grugel kicks ass. So that was Grugel 2 Rebirth, which came out in 2011, but that's not actually the first time I ever made a film that had a minigun featured in it. Nope, we're gonna go all the way back to 2004, and remember when I showed you that old VHS tape that I made? Right at the top there was Terminator 4. So at the age of around 12 or 13, I was obviously on a high from being shown the Terminator films by my older brother, and I was of course mesmerised by the scene with the minigun. So what did I go and do? I built one. Out of Connects. Watching this back now, I'm actually so shocked at the amount of effort I put into making that Connects minigun. It even has the ammo trail coming out the side of it. So obviously I called this Terminator 4 back in the day, but it was clearly just an excuse to put that Connects minigun on the screen, and I'm so glad that I did it, so that I can look back now at how creative I was when I was younger. So as you can see for this film, I also made the tinfoil bullet holes for when I was shooting Jared, who was obviously portraying a T-1000 type Terminator. Here we have later on in the film, my Terminator character gets beaten with a guitar, which somehow makes the skin on my arm fall off to reveal a Connects Terminator arm. To make it more electronical looking, I've used some old headphones and just wrapped the wires around it, and you can see them just dangling off it. So yeah, that was Terminator 4 from 2004, aka look at my Kinex minigun that I've built. And there you have it, that was just a quick look at my favourite movie weapon, the minigun. I hope you enjoyed this nice short episode of Coffee and Nostalgia, and I will see you again next time.